Hey guys, it's Lady Raven, the Wild Witch, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Sorry, I'm a little disheveled here today. Didn't look in the mirror before I started this. Anyway, today I'm here to talk to you guys about standing in your power. How do we find our power? How do we connect with it? And then how do we make ourselves stronger for it? So, a lot of times this means especially if we've been the victims of difficult situations in the past, like if we were a victim of a crime, if you were a victim of a relationship of abuse, domestic abuse, and all of that. So the first part in moving away from that, of taking our power back, is step out of this victim mentality. Oh, sorry, I forgot to put it on mute, is to step out of the victim mentality and step into saying, this happened, it was awful, and I'm dealing with it, but I am going to regain my strength and I am going to be, this person. So one of the things that I highly recommend if you were a victim of anything in the past is to go back and make sure that you are in therapy. So there is no substitute. And I know a lot of people say therapy, I don't want to do it, but there is really no substitute to help you overcome trauma other than therapy. I mean, there's really very little else that you can do to get started. Now, once you start in therapy and you start moving through the most difficult things, there's a lot of things that you can do to help you move better in that regard. So there's a lot of, we're going to talk about a lot of different options today of how do you find that core of yourself and that power, and then how do you learn to wield it in a positive way. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the difference. And we did a live. I'm not going to cover all the same things that I covered in the power versus ego live, because we talked about a very big distinction between standing in your power and being an egomaniac, right? So we talked about that. So people who stand in their power don't need to keep proving to others that they have this power. So if you see somebody that is constantly giving you their resume, like I did this and this and this, I'm so awesome and great, that's ego speaking. That's not power. Or if they're constantly having to remind you of their achievements and having you recognize their achievements for them, that is ego. That is not power. If you are constantly standing up and going, you will, address me as this and blah, 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 because I did all of this, a lot of that is ego. It's not power. So you have to be careful that understand there's a big difference between standing in your power and having that confidence of who you are and projecting and vomiting that information over everybody else. Because if you have to keep constantly reminding people of who you are, you're not standing in it. You're shoving it down people's throats. So keep that in mind. So when we stand in our power, it's kind of like a silent thing. It's like, you know who you are. You don't have this need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need recognition from anyone because you're right there. You recognize who you are, and that's enough. So if you feel yourself feeling that that's not enough for you and you need others to recognize it, you need your title to be out there as the main thing that you do. Like, here's a perfect example that I see all the time. I see people who promote to, high priest or high priestess really fast. And when they get there, they immediately go out and change everything that they have out there to, high priest or high priestess this. And they're all about that. And everything they send you has a signature, high priest, high priestess this. If they're in business doing it, that's great, because it's part of your training and it's part of your business. Like I use mine, Lady Raven HPS. But if it's not business, I see people do it on their Facebook page, people talking to their friends about it. I even see people in Coven who insist that only be addressed by their title. All of that is ego. None of that is power, because you've attained this, and now you feel the need to make sure that everybody recognizes you for it all the time. Why? Because you're very insecure in who you are, and you need that constant reminder that you've achieved this. So it's really important to understand that difference. So when you achieve something and you're standing quietly in your power, you're confident on your own. You don't need somebody else to come back and validate that. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is blame. And that is a huge, I can't even express how huge it is, of giving your power away, of not standing in it. Because when you, and I've worked with people like this so many times, and I see people in my practice like this all the time, when they come in and they're like, well, this happened and this happened, but this person caused this to happen and this, and it's not my fault. And deciding whose fault it is irrelevant. It doesn't help you in any way. So let's say I crashed with another car, right? And either I crashed into them or they crashed into me. Sure, you can determine whose fault it is. That's not going to fix your car. That's not going to, if you got injured, that's not going to fix your body. So focusing on the blame of it is a distraction from focusing on a solution of it. And a lot of people, a lot of times I see them say, well, it's everything that you do, is everything that happens to them is always because somebody else did something. What happens at that moment, the minute that it is not your fault, the minute that you disown any responsibility you may have in it, no matter how big or small it was, you just gave your power away. Because the minute that you own it, good or bad, I made that decision, kind of crappy. There may be factors that led you to make that decision, but ultimately you made that decision. Whether it was based on misinformation or not, you decided, and you need to own that, because if you don't own it, you can't fix it. So the minute that you own something that you did, the magical thing that happens at that point that gets uncovered for you is the ability to step in and fix that. So you take that situation and you make it whatever you need it to be, instead of being victimized by the situation. And a lot of people have issues with that. If you have a blaming mentality where you're constantly looking to say, if something happens and your first thought is, oh, that's not my fault, that's what's stripping your power away. Throw that out. It's not my fault. Irrelevant. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Knowing fault is not going to fix anything. Something happened and you go, okay, let's look at the factors that contributed. Let's see what I can do to change that. Let's see, what did I do to bring the situation to what it is now? And how can I fix that? So let's say a friend comes to you and gives you some advice and says, hey, you really need to get in on this deal because it's so great and it's wonderful and I'm making tons of money on it. And here you go. You step in and you do it. You step in and you do it. And then the deal blows up in your face. And you come back and you say, you know what? It's their fault. They're the ones that convinced me to do it. No, it is not their fault. You chose to do it. You maybe didn't do research. You should have researched it. Or maybe they're doing something that they succeeded with it and that you're not. You maybe didn't put enough work into it. So the first thing you need to do is recognize what were your actions in the situation, because only then can you start changing it. It's the same thing that I see this all the time, especially when I see couples come in for services. Well, she said this to me and that caused me then to do this, to say this back to her or to him, or however you want to do it. The other person can say whatever the hell they want to say to you. You choose how to react to it. Another person cannot make you do anything. The person may present a situation. They may say something. They may do something. They may do anything that's going to upset you. There may be something that happened that another person did that is putting you in a position now where you have to make a decision or you have to do something. It is still you doing that. And when you know that and when you own that, then you can say, you know what? Yes, they did that. It really hurt my feelings. It really upset me. But I'm going to choose to react differently. That's power. If you say, they did that to me and they hurt my feelings, and so I did that to them because I didn't have a choice. You absolutely had a choice. That is ego. That is not power. And ego never wants blame. When you're working from ego, you're constantly looking to see who's to blame, because you want to make sure that you're good, that you are perfect and everything. You didn't do anything wrong. Somebody else did something wrong. That is not power. That is ego. And this is what I say all the time. Ego and power do not live in the same house. So if you embrace ego, power goes out the window. You have to embrace power. And what happens? You put your ego in check. That's the beauty of embracing and standing in your own power. So the first thing you need to do is look at, how did I contribute to this situation? You may have done just one little thing. Maybe you saw somebody and you made a comment today. You said, oh, well, you're wearing that shirt. It's pretty, but I like the one you wore yesterday. And they may turn around and go in your face, like, how dare you say that to me, blah, 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 and say a bunch of crap to you. And you can turn around and say, well, what the hell? I just made a simple comment to you and they blew up. That's fine. You have a choice at this point. You can blow up at them again. And I see this all the time when people come in and say, I made one little comment and they blew up at me. So then I blew up at them. And now this whole thing happened and it's all their fault because they're the ones that blew up first. Irrelevant. Whoever blew up first does not matter because ultimately you chose to blow up back. That person made their choices and they probably handled it poorly. And then you chose to step in there and handle it poorly as well. Two people handling things poorly, nothing gets done. So that's the number one thing when you're starting to step into your power is owning what you did, good or bad. So if you did something good, you can look at it and go, you know what? Look at that. I rock that shit. That's me. And then somebody may come in and say, oh, maybe they contributed 1% to it. I see this all the time too. They contributed 1% and they come in and say, oh, look what I did. And you did 99% of the work. And you're going, jerk. I did 99% of the work. You did just this tiny little thing. If you feel the need to go out and reiterate that to everybody and make that clear to everybody that you were the one that did all the work, that's ego. When you're standing in your power, you don't need to do that because you go, you know what? I know I did the work. Most people will recognize that I did the work. And you know why? Because the minute they ask somebody something about that, they're not going to know how to answer it. Because they were 1% involved. You were 99% involved. So if you feel the need, people who feel the need to be at the center of attention of everything are standing in ego. I have all these friends. Look at my friends looking at me. Look at how awesome I am. Ego. A lot of that is ego. When you have to have the attention focused on you all the time, that's ego. And people do this for a variety of reasons, and it could also be because if you look at somebody who was in a situation where they were let's say in a mentally and emotionally abusive relationship, which is awful. And I can speak from experience because I was in one for 10 years. So they're sitting here in a mentally and physically and emotionally abusive situation. And that person is kind of constantly saying things to them that are not very nice, saying, well, you're ugly, you're not good enough, you're bad, you're this, you're that, blah, blah, blah. And you stay in that for a while. When you leave that situation, there's a lot of trauma that's going to put you in this place of like, I'm ugly, I'm bad, I'm this, because that's what the other person told you. And so when you finally do the very first thing that you say, you know what, I'm not horrible, I am awesome. And you want the whole world to know because you had this trauma sitting on you before, that now the trauma is lifted, that the trauma is not happening anymore. And you do the first thing that you could do and you get success on it and you can prove that person wrong. There's always a satisfaction of going in and saying, aha, look at that. You were wrong. I am worth something. I am awesome. If you feel the need to prove that to others or even to prove that back to your abuser, you're still caught up in the abuse. You haven't freed yourself because the minute you free yourself from that abuser, doesn't matter what they think. They were an idiot. They told you you wouldn't amount to anything. They told you you weren't good enough. And here you are rocking it. They're an idiot. Why do you need to make sure that you get their buy-in in your success? So and I know how difficult it is. And this is the main reason why I went to therapy, because therapy helped me to overcome that. Because even once I got myself out of that situation, it became a position where I had to keep constantly proving to myself that I was worthy, constantly doing things and proving to me and to the world around me that I was worthy, which means at that moment I had no power. And I had to literally claw my way back into finding my own power again to say, I am awesome, and I don't give a crap who thinks otherwise. I know it. I've proved it to myself, and I know it. I just look at it, and I know I see all the awesome things I do. I know that I'm awesome. And so that is where you need to kind of strive to get to be able to start owning some of that power. How do you do that? I mean, where do you start? Number one, blame. We talked about that already. But number two, a whole lot of self-love. Because if we don't feel worthy ourselves, we feel the need to get our worthiness from others. Other people's approval are going to mean so much to us. Why? Because we don't give ourselves our own approval. Our approval doesn't matter. We don't care what we think. We care what other people think. We want to make sure that other people are telling us that we're awesome and great. We want to make sure that other people are validating us, that are making us feel like we're worthy, like we're worth something. So the second step is to get yourself to a place where you feel that you are worthy. And you can only feel that way if you love yourself. So let's say if you're a parent, or even if you're a dog or cat parent, right? If you have a child, either two-legged or four-legged, doesn't matter. And let's say that somebody shows up and they look at your child and they say, well, they're a moron. I guarantee you, you're going to go, excuse me, who the hell are you to talk to my child like that? Because you love your child and you know that your child is not a moron. And you will not tolerate anybody speaking to your child like that. Somebody comes and talks to you like that, chances are you go like, oh, maybe I am a moron. And you sit back and you don't say anything. Why? You adore your child and you love your child. You don't adore yourself yet to that extent. So you need to get there for yourself. Same thing with the dog. I have 6 dogs. Somebody said 7 dogs. I forgot. I just got another one. Somebody looks at my dog and says, that's a horrible dog. Those are fighting words. You say that is a bad dog or a horrible dog, or that you don't like my dog, we're going to have a conversation, right? But for a long time, I didn't do that for myself. So people would say to me, you're a horrible person. And I'd be like, maybe I am. They think I'm a horrible person. God, maybe. Because all my validation came from the external. Because of that relationship kept telling me that I was no good all the time. Now somebody comes to me and says, you're a horrible person. I'm like, that's your opinion. Okay. What am I going to do about it? And in my business, I have people all the time that say, I'm going to curse you. I'm going to do this to you. None of it affects me. Because I know that whatever they do doesn't matter, because my power protects me. And I stand very strongly and silently in it. And how did I do that? A whole lot of self-love work. And it took a long time. You have to be able to look in the mirror and go, I'm pretty awesome. People who know me, who hang out with me, I think I bring a lot to the conversation. I bring a lot to the group. And you have to know that in your bones. And how do you know that? Because once you start loving yourself, you know how much you have to offer. So it's so easy for us to love other people and to stand up for other people. I know people that do that all the time. Somebody says something nasty to a friend, and I'm the same way. You say something nasty to my friend or about my friend, we're going to have issues. A lot of people will go to bat for their friends, but they won't do it for themselves. Why? Because, sorry, my stupid thing here decided to kick me out. Stupid Zoom. You're not going to do it for yourself. Why? Because you feel yourself unworthy. So beginning with self-love is a very small step at a time. And it can start in many different ways. It can start with pampering yourself, like doing any kind of self-love work and taking these wonderful baths, going to get a pedicure in a spa because, you're worthy and all this and all this. But that only takes you so far. The rest of it is to sit down and write and really get familiar with it and write down every day, what are the awesome things I did today for yourself, so that you can start recognizing it. That recognition that you seek from others, start seeking that from yourself first. And once you do that and you recognize it, you're going to start finding a little bit at a time that the more you recognize yourself for those things, the less you need other people to. Because then you recognize yourself, all of a sudden, it's the truth. You're sitting in your truth and you're okay with that. You don't need anybody else to recognize it. You already did. So it's a slow process. We didn't get here by ourselves, right? The world beats us up all the time. You go to social media, you always walk out of there feeling like I'm not pretty enough. I'm not funny enough. I'm not all these things that you're not enough. Start giving yourself those things back sometimes. Let's see. I feel sometimes that I failed so much that I don't deserve self-love. I know it's trauma. That absolutely is trauma. And a lot of times, this is the one thing that I tell people that fail a lot. So, my business is pretty successful now. This is the 8th business I launched. I have 7 businesses before this one that were major flops. Some of them were more spectacular flops than others. Some of them were little flops, but there's a lot of them that were beautiful flops that just took money and time and effort, and I lost money and I did all kinds of things. And I could have used any one of those to go like, ooh, I'm not going to do that again. But I said, you know what? No, I want to be my own boss. I don't want to be answering to another person all the time. I don't want to be on someone else's time. And I'm going to do it until I get it right. And I flopped it, learning experiences. Move on until you finally get it to the place where you did right. And it's important, especially when you have trauma, it's important to understand that the trauma a lot of times is not really going to have a lot to do with the person that you are. It's going to have more to do with the person that your partner is. So if somebody is beating up on you, chances are they don't love themselves. They don't have any self-esteem. And they're doing this to get the focus off of themselves to you. Because in their mind, it's like, I'm stupid and I'm horrible, but you're more horrible than me. Therefore, I'm better than you. So I am going to pump myself up at your expense. I'm going to make you look small and puny, and I'm going to make me look big and powerful and strong. Why? Because I don't have that power myself. And the only way that I can have it is to steal yours. And that's how trauma happens. So going to therapy to overcome some of that is your first step. But then that is only the first step. The second step is for you to start giving yourself that validation, for you to start helping yourself to reach that point where you say, you know what, I'm awesome. And it really, for me to break out of that relationship that I was in, that was traumatic, 10 years is a long time. So for me to break out of that, I had to finally get to a point because he kept saying to me, you're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not interesting enough. Anything that you can, any measure that you can have out there, I was never enough for that, any of those measures. And he kept saying, you're never going to find somebody that's going to put up with you, that's going to want to be around you. Never, ever, ever. So I finally, because I was beaten down so small and so low that for me, I finally got to a place out of desperation more than anything else that I said, you know what? That's fine. If I'm alone for the rest of my life and I suck for the rest of my life, it's better than this. It's better than being stuck with a person who beats me up emotionally and mentally every day. And that's how I left, assuming and knowing in my head, because at that point for me, that was knowledge. After 10 years of being beat up, I knew I wasn't good enough. I knew I wasn't going to make it by myself. I knew I was going to be alone forever. But things were so bad that at that point, I also knew that being by myself forever and the being not making it and just, settling for whatever life gave me was better than where I was. And that's what got me finally out of there. So then I went to therapy because, I just didn't know how to process all of that. Now I'm out of this person that started beating me up. And then you feel very vulnerable in the world. You feel like, okay, they were beating me up, but at least I was part of something. And now I'm by myself. So now is going to be really, the thought that went through my mind is all these years they've been saying this to me. And now if I suck by myself, then they were right. Then, there's nothing I can do. And that's where I made the mistake because I said, even if I suck by myself, what I eventually learned is there's something I can do about that. There's something that I can do to change that. And that's what started bringing me my power back. And that's what started getting me back to a point where I felt the ability to love myself again. And I felt the ability to love myself for the first time, actually, because even as I was a kid, I don't think I ever did. Because, I got bullied in school and all of these things. The world beats us up all the time. And so we tend to, because we are constantly being beat up for the world, we want the world to eventually say to us, wait a minute, we were wrong. You are awesome after all. That's not going to happen. You have to step in and do that for yourself. So that is the first step, is to start recognizing yourself. The validation you seek from others, start giving it to yourself. I love doing a validation journal where you can sit down and every day you go and you say, these are the things I did today that I rocked in. These are some of the stupid decisions I made today that I probably need to improve on. So, and even if there was something that happened that was completely out of my control, let's say I was expecting a particular order to come in. A customer told me that I was expecting this order to come in and I really needed it to make my quota and it didn't come in, right? Is that my fault? Not really. But so I say, this is what happened and I'm disappointed that this didn't happen. The situation, I can't go to the customer and physically make her place the order, right? But there are things I can do to maybe make sure that I get that order. So I can go back and look and say, okay, well, next time, maybe I'll have 3 orders lined up so that if only one comes through, I'm still okay. Or maybe next time, maybe I didn't follow up with the customer enough, or maybe I didn't provide them enough information to do the party, to do the order, or maybe I didn't explain to them, the urgency that I needed in getting this order processed for them. So there are still things that you could have done to affect the outcome of that situation. You could sit back and say, it's not my fault. They just didn't place their order. Sure, you can do that. That's not going to help you at all. So stepping up and doing the things that you can do and evaluating a situation that was not successful and then saying, what can I do, regardless of whose fault it is, that is going to make the situation better successful? You can do that. And you can, little by little, start changing the course of your life to what you want it to be. And that is what spirituality is all about. When you find that connection with yourself, when you find that connection with your own power, there is literally nothing that can stop you in this world. All the doors open, and you sit there and you go, how did I miss all of this? How did nobody tell me this? The world's not going to tell you that. We kind of learn that by, trial and error. So let's see. Thank you for sharing this. This has been so powerful. You are very, very welcome. I'm so glad that it helped you. I mean, it helped me a lot in the beginning. And this is something that parents don't teach their children a lot of times. This is not something you learn in school. This is not something that you learn in other places. So this is something that one day you have to decide and say, I will no longer be a victim. I am going to change my life, and I'm going to have the life that I want, not the life that the world is handing me, not the life that is happening for me, but the life that I am taking charge and I am making happen. And you will be unstoppable at that point. So I wish everybody an unstoppable February. I hope you all have a fantastic week. Remember, tomorrow we are going to do a live show, and I'm going to give some tools of some of the things that you can do to improve yourself and to kind of get into that mindset of I am powerful and I am strong, and how you can reclaim some of that power for yourself again. So I am going to show you some stuff that will help you with that tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I appreciate it, and I will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.